All right, so this is 5.4, and it's called complex rational expressions. So really, the only thing we're concerned with in this section is what we call the difference quotient. So this is called the difference quotient. And the difference quotient is the following formula. F of x plus h minus f of x all over h. So what we're going to learn in this section is how to plug in for the f of x plus h and the f of x. It's always h on the bottom. So we're going to learn how to fill in for this formula and then simplify it. So the steps for working this difference quotient, the first step you want to do, they're going to give us f of x and it's h on the bottom no matter what. So that means the first thing we got to do is find f of x plus h. So to find f of x plus h, we'll put an x plus h in for all the x's in the f function. Once I find, let me let one in real quick. Once I find f of x plus h, I will plug everything into the formula. So we'll substitute everything into the formula. So then once we've plugged in what our f of x plus h is, or f of x, we're then going to work the top of the formula. So to start out, you're going to remove parentheses. By distributing the subtraction. So remember, you got to distribute the subtraction through to every part of the second parentheses. Now, once I remove the parentheses, I'm going to combine like terms on top. By canceling common factors. Or how about common terms? Okay. So basically the combining like terms on top is just canceling stuff because you'll have one positive and one negative of everything. And you'll see that everything on top that does not contain a h is going to cancel out. And then y'all, the final step, simplify the resulting fraction by removing factors of h. By removing the factor of h. And at that point, we will be done with it. Okay, so find f of x plus h, plug all this stuff into the formula, remove parentheses, combine like terms, and then simplify the resulting fraction. So these exercises will say construct and simplify the difference quotient. And y'all, most of the examples, they'll give you this formula, f of x plus h minus f of x all over h, okay? So let's see. My first one I'm going to do f of x equals 7x minus 3. So they gave me f of x. So that's what I'll plug into the formula for that f of x. So what I got to do, I got to find what is f of x plus h going to give me. So to find f of x plus h, you're going to take f of x and put this x plus h in for that x. So that'll give us 7 times parentheses x plus h, and then minus my 3. Now we can do more work on this f of x plus h because we can actually distribute that 7 and get rid of our parentheses so that this will equal 7 times x is 7x plus 7 times h is 7h, and then bring down your minus 3. So now I know f of x plus h is going to be 7x plus 7h minus 3. I now have everything I need to plug it into my formula. And y'all, I use parentheses when I start. So this parentheses, that's going to be my f of x plus h, minus my second parentheses will be my f of x stuff. All that's going to be over h. All right, so f of x plus h was 7x plus 7h minus 3. F of x was given, and that was 7x minus 3. All of that over h. So y'all look, my next step, remove parentheses by distributing the subtraction. So you got to take that, treat it like a -1, and multiply by both of these terms. And you'll see all it's going to do is change their signs. So drop the first parentheses, 7x plus 7h minus 3. Negative times positive makes that a -7x. Negative times negative makes that a +3. All of that over h. So now y'all look on top. We're going to combine like terms, but look what happens. You got a +7x and a -7x, so they're going to cancel. So at this point, we're just going to cancel the like terms. I got a -3, that'll cancel with a +3. So y'all, all that's left on top is a 7h. And the bottom still has an h. So what happens is that the only terms that'll be left on this are the terms that contain the h's. So y'all, ask you this. Can you go further on that question?
Yes.
Yeah, because remember my last step was what? Cancel out them h's. So this h will cancel with that h, and my final answer would be 7. So I'll tell you in the long run, this difference quotient, it's nothing but a fancy slope formula. Okay, so let's do another one of these. All right, y'all. So for my next one, that'll be my number 2. Same instructions, construct and simplify the difference quotient. This one I'm given f of x equals -2x squared plus 3x plus 4. So notice my f of x is a little long this time. So I'm scared my f of x plus h will be even longer. So the first thing we do, find f of x plus h. And y'all notice this, there's two x's in this, so I got to plug in for both x's. So I'm going to bring down my -2 times x plus h squared plus 3 times x plus h plus 4. All right, y'all, look at that. So to simplify this, we got to get rid of these parentheses. So the first step I'm going to do is work that exponent. And that exponent affects the x plus h. So I'm going to work that on the side for you. X plus h squared. Now, y'all, when we figure this out, save what this equals, because you're going to have two problems where you got to figure out what x plus h squared is. And it's going to be the same for all of us. So save this answer when we pull this, because x plus h squared is an x plus h times the x plus h. So you write it twice and FOIL. So I'm going to FOIL that. X times x gives me an x squared. X times h gives me a hx. I'm just keeping them in alphabetical order when I multiply them. That way, when you get to the like terms, they look the same. Now, take the h times the x. That's going to give me another hx. And then finally, the h times the h gives me a h squared. So can you simplify that further?
Yes, add the hx to it, 2hx.
There you go. So I get an x squared plus a 2hx plus h squared. So for my first step over here, finding my f of x plus h, I'm going to replace x plus h squared with that. So I get an x squared plus 2hx plus h squared. And then the rest I'm just bringing down. My plus 3 times x plus h. And at the end is my plus 4. So the reason I only did that on my first step is because on this step, I've got to distribute the -2. So I just brought this one down so that I can do all my distributing at the same time. So the -2 is going to multiply by them 3. The 3 will multiply by them 2. And then we'll bring down our 4. So y'all, -2 times x squared is a -2x squared. -2 times 2hx is a -4hx. -2 times h squared, -2h squared. 3 times x gives me a positive 3x. 3 times h, positive 3h, plus, bring down your 4. So how about this? Can you simplify that one any further?
No, not as of now.
No, we don't have any like terms. Good job. So now we're at to the point, since we cannot simplify that further, we need to plug everything into our formula. My f of x plus h minus f of x all over our h. All right, so this one's sort of long. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts. -2x squared minus 4hx minus 2h squared plus 3x plus 3h plus 4 minus my f of x, which they gave me, -2x squared plus 3x plus 4. So all that's over our h. But I'm going to tell you, everything in the second parentheses, 100% of the time will cancel with its counterpart in those first parentheses. But first, we got to get some signs changed, it looks like. So we're going to remove parentheses and distribute that negative. So y'all, the sad thing about these problems is that that's a lot of stuff you're having to rewrite every time. So bring out the first parentheses, negative 2x squared minus 4hx minus 2h squared plus 3x plus 3h plus 4. And the good thing is you don't have to never change nothing on the first parentheses. And it's the longer part anyway. But now watch this. Negative times negative makes that a positive 2x squared. Negative times positive makes that a negative 3x. Negative times positive makes that a negative 4. All over h. So all these x plus h squared make some pretty long problems in here. But watch this. Negative 2x squared cancels with the 2x squared. Let's see, what's next? I got a positive 3x cancels with a negative 3x.
And the -4 and +4.
Yeah, -4 and +4. So look, we got three things left. So let's bring them down. Negative 4hx minus 2h squared plus 3h are all divided by the h. So I'll tell you what you got to do, and we'll see what y'all get for this one. Everybody on top
Has an H.
has an h, so you got to divide them all by that h on the bottom. So what are y'all getting?
Well, can't you factor out the H on top first?
You could, but that's a lot of work. But you could factor out an h and then just cancel those h's like that. But all I do is, here's a negative 4h x over h. That h cancels since there's only one h there, right? That brings me a negative 4. So that's what I was talking about. Cancel an h out of every factor. So check this out. That'll be minus. What do you get when you have a 2h squared divided by h?
It's just H. Negative 2H.
Negative 2h. So if you got two h's on top, one cancels, leaving you with one h. And then the last term, so everything that's separated has to be divided. So how about this? 3h divided by the h.
3.
Leaves you 3. And y'all, that will be your final answer. So doing that is sort of like what you're talking about, but you're still going to have to divide all these by the h when you bring it out as a common factor, okay? So this is sort of doing that into one step instead of having to make y'all another whole step on that. So they're fun when you got those x squareds in them, right? And y'all remember, copy this down right here. Because when you figure out x plus h squared, it's going to be the same thing as that. All right, so y'all look like y'all ready for a fun one. So let me get my paper turned over and flipping up. Okay, so this is my number 3. So y'all got 5 of these to do all together. I'm trying to do like the hard ones. So y'all look at this. Find and construct the difference quotient. F of x is going to be 2x to the third. So that's not as long as the last problem. So let's see what we get. First, let's find f of x plus h. That's going to equal 2 times x plus h to the third power. So y'all, we're going to work this on the side again, because we got to figure out this x plus h to the third power. So remember, you always got to start with the exponent before you distribute that too, okay? Exponents have priority over any multiplying. So y'all, guess what? We get to write that thing 3 times. X plus h, x plus h, x plus h. So you got to FOIL this. So we need to start by FOILing the first 2 down here. Now I'm going to FOIL the last 2 because it's easier on the next step. I'm just going to bring that x plus h down. So can y'all tell me what 2 of these is going to give me? So you're going to be FOILing the x plus h
X
times
squared
x squared.
plus 2xh plus h squared.
There you go. So we knew what them 2 equaled, but now we got to take those 2 times the other one. So I'm going to distribute my x first, then I'll come back and distribute that h. So that's going to give me a lot of terms. X times x squared is x to the third. X times 2hx is a 2hx squared. X times h squared is a h squared x. Now, remember, I'm just keeping mine in alphabetical order, but x squared h, x h squared is the same thing, long as the exponents match, okay? All right, now let's do the h. H times x squared is a h x squared. H times 2hx is a 2h squared x. And then finally, the h times h squared is a h to the third. So can I make that one? Can I go further on that one?
Yes.
Yeah, because right here, hx squared adds to that hx squared. And then this h squared x will add to that h squared x. So as long as the exponents on the variables match up, add them together. So y'all look at this, h to the third, 2 and 1 give me 3hx squareds. 1 and 2 give me 2h squared x. And then at the very end is my h to the third. So y'all want to save that one for when you work this problem, because x plus h to the third will always equal that. So save your x plus h squared and your x plus h to the third. So y'all guess what? I can now replace 2hx to the third with all of this. So I got an x to the third plus 3hx squared plus 3h squared x. Whoops, where'd I go? This one should have been a 3. I put a 2 by mistake. And then plus my h to the third. So y'all make sure you put a 3 there. 1 and 2 make 3. All right. Now that we've done the exponent, we can now distribute the 2 to everybody in here. So we get 2x to the third plus 6hx squared plus 6h squared x plus 2h to the third. All of that is now f of x plus h. Y'all remember when you're adding these like terms, these two always have the same number in front of them, okay? All right, what was we about to do? Substitute into our formula. And remember, all of that will be over h. So my f of x plus h was what we just figured out. 2x to the third plus 6hx squared plus 6x squared h. Whoops. That's a h squared x. And then my 2h to the third. So remember, this is hx squared. This one is h squared x, and then plus the 2h to the third. F of x was just 2x to the third. All right, drop parentheses, but y'all, this one's only got one thing you're subtracting. So at this point, you can cancel out that 2x third minus that 2x third, because you don't have to worry about distributing. You just got one thing there. So notice everything that's left has a h. 6hx squared plus 6h squared x plus 2h to the third all over h. And notice all three of these have that h in them. All right, y'all. So who wants to simplify that one?
Would it be 6x squared plus 6hx plus 2?
Or you're on a roll. Come on with that last.
The h's cancel out, so would it be just,
Well, remember, you got three h's up here. So you can only cancel one of those h's.
the 2h squared?
You 2h squared. There you go. So basically, when you're canceling, you're basically subtracting exponents. So 1 minus 1 left you with 0 h's here. 2 minus 1 left you with 1 h. 3 minus 1 left you with 2. And y'all's are going to be really similar to these. All they're going to do maybe is change the numbers in front. But your process is going to be the same as this. So make sure you keep that for your problems, and then the one where we did the squares. All righty. So now I'm going to pull up MATLAB so we can play with our test 2 review. So let me share that page. And this will sort of let me know how much y'all remember. So let me minimize that. So y'all should be seeing my problem number 1. So my question, let me make that larger. All right, so y'all got a little graph there. So the question is this function odd, even, or neither?
Is it even?
It's even, definitely. Because remember, even were symmetric to the y-axis. So if you fold that over the y-axis, it lands on itself. And then another way you can tell, look how many times it touches the x-axis. It touches the x-axis twice, which is an even number. So y'all, that is definitely even. All right, so then you go to the number 2. Let me make this, let's see. Some of y'all must be getting knocked off and putting back on. So they give you the function g of x is x plus 1 squared plus 2. So I gave y'all an attachment of them graphs that had 7 graphs on it that were the basic graphs. So you got to come out and start with the graph of f of x equals blank. They want the basic graph. So since this one has an exponent of 2 behind the parentheses, its basic graph would be the x squared graph. So you have to put in, let me get it in the box. So you put in your x and then do the exponent and square it. Now, shift it blank 1 unit. So your choices for the 1 unit are up, down, left, or right. Now remember, that 1 is inside the parentheses. When it's inside the parentheses, it moves me left or right. So do y'all remember what happens when you add 1 inside the parentheses? Is that going to go left or right? And that's the one that seems a little backwards.
Is it left?
It's definitely left. So remember, inside the parentheses, positive moves me left, negative will move me right. So then it says shift it blank 2 units. So we know we ain't going left or right with this one. It's either going up or down. And to me, it's more true to its number.
Move it up.
Is it going to go up? So remember, inside the parentheses, sort of backwards is left or right. Any numbers at the end, they're going to move me up or down. So positive up, negative down. All right, then it wants me to click to enlarge the graph. Now remember, x squared graphs are going to make a parabola if you look on your sheet. So what you do, click that x squared tool and click anywhere on this graph. It will put it in the middle and open up this little box. So let's see, we went left 1, so that'd be horizontal, left and right. We went left 1, so we moved that to -1. And then let me move this so I can see at the end we had a +2. That would be a vertical shift. +2, we go to 2. So it moved the graph, look at it, it moved it left 1 and up 2 for us. So y'all at that point, just save that and move on to the next. So question on that. All righty, same thing here. Now this one, they actually tell you what the basic graph is. It looks like the square root of x down here. So what we got to do is figure out what that -10 is doing. And y'all remember this. If it's under that radical, it's like it's in parentheses. So since you're subtracting 10, is that going to move me up, right, left, or down?
Right.
Yep, because inside parentheses was sort of opposite what we thought. And it's going to move me right 10 units. So y'all remember the basic graph always starts in the center of the graph. So which one of these graphs would you pick for going right 10 units? A, B, C, or D? All right, so let me zoom A in. A looks like it went left, right? That's not starting in the center, that's starting left. B looks like it went down. C looks like it went up, because remember, this should be starting right in the center. And if you look at D, D doesn't start in the center. It looks like it went right about 10. So click D because it actually went right, and then go to your next one. All right, so on this one, I would start with the parentheses, then work the negative out front, and then see what that +6 does. So let's see the first option. We're starting with the graph of x squared, it says. So that x -4 in parentheses, is it moving me left, right? And see, that's the only choices in here. is that's either gonna move me left or right.
Right.
Yep, because remember, negative goes right, so you would pick right 4. Then reflect it across the x-axis or the y-axis. And y'all, I'll tell you what, we never flipped over one of those axes. There's only one that we flipped over, and that's the x-axis. So 100%, you better put x-axis on that part of this question. Because remember, it reflects it over like our parabolas, they look like a U, but if I reflect them, they look like a upside down U. All right, so what's the 6 doing at the end?
Is it gonna go to up 6?
Up 6. So you put them in and then you hit next. Oh, so I'll write this one down. This one says find the zeros. F of S equals S squared plus 10S plus 24. So remember, find the zeros is like finding the solutions. So I take that S squared plus 10S plus 24, set it equal to 0. So to find zeros, you set it equal to 0. So S squared plus 10S plus 24 equals 0. So 2 ways to do this. You can either factor this or use the quadratic formula. So I think the support homework, they sort of worked on the factoring. But y'all, I'm going to work it the guaranteed way. So I'm going to use the quad formula, because that'll work on 100% of these. So remember, quad formula, x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So you got to know how to work this, or some of y'all might have those calculator programs I see in. So that'll work this quad, member. All right, so either way, you got to know what A, B, and C are. No number here, so we treat it like a 1. So A is 1, B is 10, C will be 24. All right, so let's plug in for everything using our formula here. So X is going to equal negative B, which is 10, plus or minus square root B squared will be 10 squared minus 4 times A, which is 1, C, which is 24. All that over 2 times A, which is 1. And y'all remember, I can do a little bit on the outside, but most of my work is going to be up under that little radical for a little bit. Because that negative B is going to make that a negative 10, plus or minus. So under my radical, 10 squared is 100. Minus, because that's going to stay negative. I've only got one negative over here. So let's see, when I multiply all that, negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times 24 is what, 96. All that over 2 times 1, which is 2. All right, so now I can actually subtract under the radical. So I got negative 10 plus or minus square root. 100 minus 96 is 4. All of that over 2. All right, so my last step with that radical is now to take the square root of 4. So bring down to negative 10 plus or minus square root of 4 is 2. All of that over 2. And y'all, I'll tell you this on this one, since all these will divide by 2, that'll make this even smaller. Negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5, plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I've simplified that fraction as far as I can go. So now I will get my two answers. So to get the two answers, I do negative 5 plus 1. I'm going to see what that equals. To get my second answer, I'm going to do negative 5 minus 1. All right, y'all, here we go. The first answer, negative 5 plus 1 is a negative 4. Negative 5 minus 1 here is a negative 6. So my answers would be x equals negative 4, comma, negative 6. Now, they probably give you the x equals. All you got to do is put in negative 4, comma, negative 6, and be done with that one. So let me ask y'all this. Are any of y'all like factoring?
It's not that bad.
Yeah, so you could have factored that because you could have found factors of 24 that added to 10. That would have been 6 and 4. And you would have set them factors equal to 0 and solved, and you'd have came up with that negative 4, negative 6, okay? So let's go back here to the math lab. So that one over here, so you just got to put in the answers because they got the is and are part. So you would do the negative 4, comma, negative 6, and then move on to your next question. But I'll say the reason you wanted to know how to do the quad formula, because this one, you have no choice but to use the quad formula. So f of x equals 5x squared minus an x plus a 2. So same thing, find the zeros, which is find my solutions. But this one don't factor, so you got to use the quad. All right, so we know our quad formula. X equals negative b. So y'all, let's figure out what a, b, and c are. I know what a is, it's 5. What about b?
Negative 1.
There you go, and then c would be 2. All right, so negative b, which is a negative 1, plus or minus square root negative 1 squared minus 4 times a, which was 5, and c, which was 2, all of that over 2 times 5. Okay, so that negative turned that negative 1 now into a positive 1. Oh, y'all, negative 1 squared is a positive 1. This side only has one negative, so we want to be subtracting. So negative 4 and 5 is negative 20. Negative 20 and 2 is negative 40. All over this time, 2 times 5 is 10. So I think we got to add under that radical. So that looks like that's going to be sort of negative, don't it? So 1 plus or minus square root 1 minus 40 is a negative 39 all over 10. So y'all, we need to do some side work here. We need to figure out what we can do to that square root of negative 39. Now remember, to simplify radicals, you got to be able to remove these perfect square factors that I'm writing. So that's big enough because those are all way bigger than 39 almost.
So you can't factor it, but you can do I with the 39.
Oh, good job, because there's no factors in 39. So you got to do this, remember? Make that a negative 1 times 39. And like you said, square root of negative 1 equals I. So I get a I square root of 39. Woo, good job. So let's put that in for that. So I get 1 plus or minus I square root of 39 over 10. So here's the thing. When you end up with a real number, which is the 1, and an imaginary, which is that I squared root of 39, they like us to split this one into 2 fractions. So you put the 1 over the 10, plus or minus, and then you put the I square root of 39 over the 10. So this one has to be written in A plus BI form, they call it. So at this point, split the fraction since imaginary. So let me show you how to put this one in on that math lab because it's sort of tricky. So the first thing I do is hit the fraction bar for the first one. And that was a 1 over 10. Then I'm going to arrow right. I'm going to use that plus or minus down here. That way I only got to write this once. I'm going to hit the fraction. You got an I down here. So hit the I. Then hit the radical. Under that radical was the 39. Then I'm going to arrow to the bottom and put in the 10. So you're not really changing anything. You're just splitting it apart, okay? All right, y'all, let's see what's next. Okay, so let me make this graph bigger because all we got to do to this one is look at this graph and see what these 2 points are. So the x-intercepts, because these cross the x-axis, so they want you to put these in as ordered pairs. So you got to hit your parentheses. So the point on the left is sitting at -3. So that point will be -3, comma 0, close parentheses. Then there's a comma to separate them. Put your parentheses again. The point on the right is sitting at 5, 0. So that'll be 5, comma 0. And then close your parentheses. Now, what they want to know are the solutions. The solutions are actually equal to the x value of those intercepts. So the first x value was -3, and then comma, the second one is what, a +5. So this was that one problem where they wanted y'all to realize that the x values of those x-intercepts always equal those solutions, okay? So then you would hit next. Oh, here we go. This is the fun one. This is the ladder on the tower. So let me write what we got. So they're saying a wire stretched from the ground to the top of an antenna. The wire is 10 feet long. All right, so it's 10 feet long. Then the height of the tower is 2 feet greater than the distance D, which is the distance from the tower's base to the end of the wire on the ground. So we got our information. So they want me to find the distance D and the height of that tower. So I always sort of draw me a picture on this one. So I got my antenna tower over here. They say I got a wire stretch from the top of my tower to the ground. And that wire is 10 feet long. Then they don't know how far this is, but they call this distance D from the tower's base to the end of the wire. So we'll mark that as D. Now over here, the height of my tower, they said was 2 greater than D. So that'll be D plus 2. So y'all notice this is the problem that I made a right triangle out of. And I used the Pythagorean theorem, which was a squared plus b squared equals C squared. And remember, C always has to be the hypotenuse, which is the longest side. And it's always across from that right angle, okay? That has to be C. A and B, it don't matter. So I just usually do A and B. So we plug in for A, B, and C, what we got. A was D, so that'll be D squared plus B is D plus 2, so that'll be D plus 2 squared. That's going to equal to C squared, which is 10 squared. So simplify this by getting rid of these parentheses and figuring out what that 10 squared is. So we got to do a little side work on this one to figure out D plus 2 squared. All right, so that is D plus 2 times D plus 2. So y'all, that'll give me a D squared plus 2D plus 2D plus 2 times 2 is 4. We're going to add like terms, so we get a D squared plus 4D plus 4. We can now plug that in for that, and then we'll figure out what 10 squared is. So substituting for this, I have D squared plus 4D plus 4, and then y'all 10 squared.
100.
100. All right, so before I move stuff from side to side, look here, I got like terms on this side. So D squared plus D squared is 2D squared plus my 4D plus 4 equals 100. So look here, that has a D squared in it. So since that's a D squared in it, I'm now going to use the quad formula to solve this. Now, if I'm going to use the quad, I need a 0 on this side. Remember, I got to have a 0 to use the quad. So I'm going to have to come in and subtract 100 from both sides before I figure out what A, B, and C are. So bring down to 2D squared. Bring down to 4D, because you can only subtract 100 from the number 4. So 4 minus 100 give us a 96, now equal to 0. And y'all, I'm going to do one more thing before I use the quad on this. All three, well, hell, all 4 of these numbers will divide by the same number. They will all divide by what?
1.
Well, that won't help me though, because 2D
No.
divided by 1, that's going to leave you the same thing. How about another number they all divide by?
2.
So let's divide them all by 2. That way, when we use the quad, we got smaller numbers, okay? So see, 2 divided by 2, that leaves you 1D squared. 4 divided by 2 leaves me 2D. 96 divided by 2 leaves me a 48. All that equal to 0. Remember, I can divide by 2 on this side as long as I did by that side, but you're not changing nothing over there. 0 divided by 2 is still a big 0, okay? All right, but that gave me smaller numbers. I can use 1 now, B is 2, C is negative 48. And y'all are going to be able to divide by 2 because every time I've done this problem, it was always even numbers up here, okay? All right, so now we plug it in. X equals negative B, which is 2, plus or minus square root of B squared, which is 2, minus 4 times A, which is 1, C, which is the negative 48. All that over 2 times A, which is 1. All right, that makes that a -2, plus or minus. All right, so under my radical, 2 squared is what, 4? And y'all look at this. I got 2 negatives on the right side. So since I got 2 negatives, this will make that side positive. All righty. So now, if that's going to be positive, we got to figure out 4 times 1 is 4. 4.
Positive 192.
How much was it?
192.
So 192. All that's over. 2 times 1 is 2. So now, just like a while ago, we got to add under our radical. So -2 plus or minus square root of 196 all over 2. All right, so I'm going to move that up here now. So y'all, we know that's going to give me -2 plus or minus. So you're going to have a perfect square here. So what is the square root of 196?
14.
That's going to give you 14 all over 2 on the bottom. So notice once again, since all these will divide by 2, I can simplify this. -2 divided by 2 gives me a -1. Plus or minus 14 divided by 2 gives me 7. So now we can get our first answer and our second. First answer will be -1 plus 7. Second answer will be -1 minus 7. All right, so on top, -1 plus 7 is what? 6. -1 minus 7 is a -8. So my question is, what does D equal? What is this distance D?
6.
Got to be 6, right? Remember, when you're looking at distance, you cannot keep those negative numbers. All right, so if D is 6, my next question is, how tall is my tower?
6 plus 2, so 8.
So 8, there you go. So once you find your distance, plug that over here to your D plus 2, which like you said was 6 plus 2, gave me 8. So this one will actually ask you for both answers. So notice the first one says the distance from the wire to the tower, we said that was 6. And then you go down here, the height of my tower, that was 8. All right, now y'all plugging them in and moving on. Oh, look at this. We got both these problems. We got the ladder one and the wire one. So let's see. Foot of the ladder is 7 feet from a wall. Then it says the height the ladder reaches on the wall. So height of ladder on wall. And length of ladder are consecutive integers. So this one only wants to know how long is the ladder. All right, y'all, so let's draw our picture and work this one out. All right, so here's my wall. I've got a ladder leaned up against it. So the first thing I know, the foot of this ladder is 7 feet from this wall. So this distance right here was 7 feet. Now they're telling me this height the ladder reaches on the wall over here, and the length of that ladder are consecutive integers. So what that means, integers when they're consecutive are in a row. So to go from one number to the next number, you're just adding 1. So if this is X to get to the next consecutive integer for the length of this ladder, that's going to be x plus 1. And y'all's is going to be the same way. The height is going to be x, the ladder x plus 1. And y'all look at that. Once again, I got a right triangle. So we're going to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And remember, c has to be that longest side, okay? And then you can make this a and this one b. So fill in for the a squared, that'll give you 7 squared. B squared will be x squared. That's going to equal c squared, which will be x plus 1 squared. So we know 7 squared is 49. Can't do nothing to the x squared, so I'm bringing it down. X plus 1 squared, I'm going to have to do a little side work on that. So if you notice on this test, you're doing quite a bit of FOILing, okay? All right, x plus 1 squared will be x plus 1 times x plus 1. So here we go, x squared. X times 1 is just the x. 1 times x is just the x. 1 times 1 is 1. So shorten that down by adding the x's together. So you'll get a 2x in the middle, and then bring down our 1. So the right side of this is now that x squared plus 2x plus 1. So it's starting out with these x squared terms. So it's starting out quadratic, but y'all guess what? When you got an x squared on each side and you try to move them by subtracting that x squared, because remember, since it's quadratic, I would try to get everything on one side equal to 0. But when you have an x squared on each side, it sort of cancels them out on both sides. So you would bring down that 49. And then since the x squareds cancel out on both sides, all that's left is the 2x plus 1. So we're happy on this problem. We don't have to use the quad formula because we do not have any x squared terms left. So for this one, all we got to do is solve for x. So you want to get the x by itself by subtracting 1 first. So I get 48 now equals 2x. Then divide both sides by 2. So y'all, that gives me what, a 24 equal to my x. So my question is, how long is the ladder?
The 25.
Yeah. See, the big mistake is people think, oh, I solved for the x and they put that 24 here. But remember, they're not asking for x. We're asking for x plus 1, which will make that 24 plus 1, which gives you 25. So y'all, whatever answer you get here, you better add that 1 to it and get that ladder, okay? All righty, so we go over there. Put in 25 for that one. And move to the next one. All right, so let me zoom this in. So this first one here, if you notice, they're telling you what the vertex is. They're giving you the point for the bottom point on this, and it's in parentheses, -1, 2. So they're giving you the vertex. So come over here and put in your -1, 2. in parentheses, because it's got to be an ordered pair. Now that I know that's my vertex, what is my axis of symmetry? And it's got to be like an equation, y'all. So I'm going to give
Is
you.
it x equals -1?
Oh, good job. X equals -1. So the axis of symmetry is always x equals, and good job, it's what that x value is. So if the x value gave me the axis of symmetry, what is the minimum or maximum value of this function? Oh, and I think that's -1, -2. So let me put a negative on my ordered pair up here. Yeah, I just zoomed in on my mind. So that was the -1, -2. You just can't tell because it's on those lines, okay? So that makes the minimum or maximum value equal what? Remember, that's -2. So the y value gives you the min or max value. The x value gives you the axis of symmetry. All right, y'all, that's all they wanted on that. And so we hit next. All right, so this one, we're actually going to have to do some work because they want us to find the vertex. So let's see what they're giving us. F of x equals 2x squared plus 6x plus 2. Now, let me go to my paper because we know the vertex formula we learned. So remember, the vertex looks like an ordered pair, -b over 2a, and then f of -b over 2a. This was that 7.5 section. So we find the x value, plug that x value back into the function to get the y value. All right, so the x is equal to -b over 2a. So remember, for this one, a is 2, b is 6, c is 2. So -b would be negative times the 6 divided by 2 times the a, which is 2. So y'all, that's going to give me what, a -6 on top. 2 times 2 is 4 on the bottom. And this one you have to reduce because both of these divide by 2. So that'll divide and give you -3 over 2. So we would technically, at this point, we know the x value of that vertex is -3/2. So now the trick is to find the y value, which will be f of -b over 2a, which is -3/2. So we put that -3/2 in for both of these x's. So you got 2 times -3/2 squared plus 6 times -3/2 plus 2. Now, I'm going to work this by hand, but y'all, you can plug this right in the calculator, just how we got it here. Okay, 2 parentheses, -3 divided by 2, close parentheses, square it. You can put all this in your TI 8384. It's going to give you a decimal, turn the decimal back into a fraction by hitting math, enter. So I'm going to work this. So the first thing I got to do is that exponent. So bring down to 2. When you square a fraction, you square both numbers. So -3 times -3 is a 9 on top. 2 times 2 on bottom is a 4. And then I'm just bringing everything else down. Now I'm going to multiply 2 times 9/4 to 6 times -3/2. And put a 1 under those numbers. because you got to go straight across. 2 times 9 is 18. 1 times 4 is 4. This one you got a positive times a negative, so that's going to be a negative. 6 times 3 is 18. 1 times 2 is 2. And then finally, bring down that 2. So since we're to the add and subtracting stage, we got to find a common denominator. So we need to put a 1 under that 2. Because all 3 of these got to change if needed. So y'all, the least common denominator between 4, 2, and 1.
4.
There you go. So I don't have to change the first one. So bring down that 18 over 4 minus, remember to turn a 2 into a 4, you multiply by 2, top and bottom. So that's going to give you 36 over 4. To turn a 1 into a 4, you're going to multiply by 4, top and bottom. So that'll give me an 8 over 4. So at this point, it's going to be something over 4. Now remember, the second one is always twice as big as the first one, opposite in sign. So that was a positive 18, this was a negative 36. And remember, it done that pattern every time. So here we go. 18 minus 36 is a negative 18. Negative 18 plus 8 is a negative 10. So y'all check this out. Since I reduced that first fraction, one of y'all reduce this fraction. So negative 10 over 4 reduces to what?
Negative 5/2.
Negative 5/2. So my y value will now be negative 5/2. So there's my vertex. So I have everything I need for these answers. So let's go see. So we know the vertex, we just got it, put it in parentheses. Negative 3 divided by 2. Arrow over, put a comma, and then it was negative 5 divided by 2. Arrow over, close parentheses. So y'all tell me the axis of symmetry.
X equals negative 3/2.
Okay, remember, it's always got to be x equals. How about this one? Does this parabola have a maximum or minimum? And remember, I always looked at the A for that question.
It's positive, so it's a minimum.
It's a positive, so it's a minimum. Because remember, when it's positive, it looks like a U. When it's negative, it sort of flips it over. All right, so here, what is my minimum or maximum value? And y'all tell you, it's one of them 2 points. And we done used one of them, so there's only one left.
Negative 5/2.
So the y value is your min or max. So now I'm going to click to enlarge my graph. So on this one, I use my calculator to find my second point, but my first point has to be that vertex we just found. So I'm going to hit the parabola tool. And to do the negative 3/2, I'm going to come down here. Since this is already broken in halves, move 3 marks to the left. So negative 1/2, negative 1, negative 3/2. Negative 3/2 will be in between negative 2 and negative 1. And then it was negative 5/2. So since it's in halves, I'm going to mark it down 5 spots. 2, 3, 4. So that puts me going on the y-axis in between negative 2 and -3. Now, to get my second point, I would just probably go to my calculator and graph this in y equals 2x squared plus 6x plus 2. And I would probably just go to the table and find a point that looks easy. So I'm looking on my calculator. I got a point 0.2. So I'm just going to go to 0.2, which will be 0 on the x and up to 2 on the y. Now, remember, when you do 0.2, you got to move according to the numbers, okay? Now, if I moved like the 3 halves and 5 halves, I would just count the number of ticks, and that'll be how many halves, okay? All right, so drew your parabola, and you can, and if you graphed it on the calculator, you'd see the same parabola, okay? So save that and then hit your next. So let's see what y'all would say to this. True or false? The graph of x minus 4 squared can be obtained by translating h of x equals x squared left 4 units. So here's what y'all got to think about. That's the x minus 4 inside those parentheses. Does that minus 4 move me left or right? They're saying you move it left 4 units. Is that true or false? Oh, y'all letting me get y'all on that one. Remember, that's a horizontal shift if it's moving it left. So, okay, I see my chat lighting up. Let me catch you. So they say false. That is a good answer. Because remember, when you subtract, it actually moves this to the right, not the left. So that is definitely false. There you go. Oh, my page is looking all righty. Oh, y'all look at this, more vertex. So this one, we're going to find vertex, min or max value, range, intervals where it's increasing and decreasing. So let me write this. That is f of x equals x squared plus 8x plus 15. So we'll work it. We at least need that vertex point, remember. Now remember, since that's a positive, this graph will have a minimum. So we're going to find that point, and then we can answer all them other questions fairly easy. A is 1, B is 8, C is 15. So find the x coordinate first. Negative b over 2a will equal negative times 8 over 2 times 1. That gives me negative 8 over 2, which gives us what, a negative 4. So the x coordinate is negative 4. The y coordinate is found in f of negative 4. So I get people on this one because when they square that negative 4, they're not putting it in parentheses. Remember, anytime you square a negative, it better become positive. All right, now the 8 times the negative 4 plus 15. So negative 4 give you 16. 8 times a negative 4 will be a negative 32. And then bring down the 15. So once again, this is twice as big and opposite in sign. 16 minus 32 is a negative 16. Negative 16 plus 15 gives me a negative 1. So I now know my y value is negative 1. So y'all, we would go put that in. Well, hang on, let's figure out stuff. They want to know whether I got a min or a max in the value, and then the increasing and decreasing. And the range, okay? So since we know these points, the X is how I figure out my range values. The -4 will be my increasing and decreasing values. Because remember, decreasing and increasing only care about the X's. The range cares about the Y values, okay? So notice this one's decreasing, going left to right. So it starts way out here to the left. So my decreasing, since it starts to the left, is starting out here at -infinity. And you're going down the X's until you get to -4. The increasing on the X's will start at that -4 and head towards positive infinity. So remember, one of these will always go from -infinity to the number. The other one's going to go from the number to positive infinity, depending on whether it's a minimum or a max. So a max, these would have been opposite, okay? Now the range, when you find the range, the minimum range value is that Y value of -1. But remember, you always put the range Y value in brackets. So it's got bracket -1. The range is going upwards. So we say it's headed towards positive infinity. So we got our intervals now and our range. So now let's put these answers in. So the vertex we found, so that's going to be in parentheses. We got a -4, comma, -1, close parentheses. Since my A was positive, we had a minimum, so it opens upward and has a minimum value of -1. Remember, that equals the Y value. The range we said was, remember, I got to use that bracket. So let's see. That's the bracket on my keyboard. And the range went from the smallest range of -1, comma, to positive infinity since it went up. And then that has a curvy parenthesis. We said this function was increasing. It's increasing from -4 to infinity. So that would be parentheses, -4, comma, infinity, close parentheses. Decreasing was that left side. So that left side, parentheses, came in at -infinity, comma, to the X value of -4. So just remember, increasing, decreasing are looking at the X's. The range is looking at the Y values. Okay, so I don't guess I got to graph this one. So we hit next. And look at this, another vertex. So we got f of x equals -8x squared minus 24x plus, what's that, a 9? And let's see, the same thing, right? Vertex, max or min value, range, and intervals of increasing and decreasing. So the trick is, the first one was positive for the A, this one's negative for the A. So let's go. So since this one's negative for the A, this one's going to flip over and have a max, okay? All right, y'all, A is a -8, B is a -24, and C is 9. I'm going to find my X coordinate, -b over 2a, and that'll equal a negative times -24 over 2 times a -8. So the top gives me a positive 24. The bottom gives me a negative 16. So that will be a negative. So y'all, 24 and 16, what's the largest number I can get out of those?
Eight.
Yes, I'm going to do 8. So 24 divided by 8 gives me a 3. 16 divided by 8 gives me a 2. So dang it, you got 2 with fractions, it looks like. A problem will go in this one. So negative 3/2 means for my y value, I find f of negative 3/2. So put a negative 3/2 in for those two x's. So negative 8 times negative 3/2 squared minus 24 times a negative 3/2. And then at the end is a plus 9. So this will be the last one we do today. And then next class, we'll pick up with the rest of these, okay? All right, so remember, exponent first. So bring down to negative 8. Negative 3 times negative 3 on top is 9. 2 times 2 is 4 on the bottom. I'm just bringing everything else down. That way I can do all my multiplying at once. So I'm multiplying the negative 8 and the negative 24 by those fractions. So I'm just putting a 1 on it so I can go straight across. Negative 8 and 9 is negative 72 over 4. Negative times negative is going to make that a positive. 24 times 3 is 72 over 2 plus my 9. All right, so look here, I'm going to find the least common denominator again. And most of these I'm doing is ending up with a 4, right? So I don't have to change this one, negative 72 over 4. This one, I multiply top and bottom by 2. So I get a positive 144 over 4. This one, I multiply top and bottom by 4. So I get a 36 over 4. So still double the first one and opposite end sign again. All right, so negative 72 plus 44 is a positive 72. 72 plus 36 gives me 108 over 4. Yo, I think that can actually divide out. Let's see. 108 divided by
7.
what I get?
27.
27. So the y value is 27. So the range, now notice the range always comes from the bottom up, but since this one's turned upside down, we're coming in from negative infinity, and it's going to the maximum range value, which is 27 in brackets. So when you got a maximum, it always starts with a negative infinity to the y value of the vertex. All right, increasing is on the left side. Decreasing is on the right side. So you're coming in on the increasing, you're coming in from negative infinity until you hit what? Remember,
Negative 3/2.
negative 3/2. And then decreasing is this side going downhill. So it starts at that negative 3/2. And it's decreasing as I go right towards infinity. Okay. All righty, so let's look at MathLab and see what they're wanting. So we got a vertex. That would be negative 3/2. Arrow over, comma, and then 27, close parentheses. We said it had a maximum because it's opening downward. And the maximum value was the 27. So they're throwing you off a little bit because they're not asking for the line of symmetry on these, okay? All right, so the range we said started from negative infinity, comma, and it went all the way to 27, and we used a bracket. Increasing, we said, was from negative infinity all the way up to negative 3/2. And then the decreasing went from negative 3/2 to positive infinity. And then let's see, infinity down here, and then close parentheses. Now remember, on the range, the Y value always has a bracket. On the increase and decreasing, they're always curvy parentheses, okay? All right, y'all, let me see. So let's knock out this one because that'll be all of the vertex stuff. So this is question 15. That way we can come in with stuff after the vertex on the next class. And they're giving you the formula, h of t, which means the height at any time t is a negative 16t squared plus 64t plus 7. And all we got to do is find the maximum height and how quick it takes it to get to that maximum height. All right, so you're finding the vertex because this thing is going to look like that. And we're looking for this point. So A is negative 16, B is 64, and C is 7. So we'll find the X value first, which is really the T value for this. Negative B over 2A, which will equal negative times 64 over 2 times negative 16. So y'all, all these negatives are going to cancel and make this a positive because I got negative 64 divided by negative 32, which is a positive 2. So that tells me that the time it took to reach its maximum height was 2 seconds. Now to find the maximum height, we find the Y value. So we're finding h of 2, which will equal negative 16 times 2 squared plus 64 times 2 plus 7. So I'm going to do the exponent first. So that gives me negative 16. 2 squared is 4. And then I'm bringing everything else down. And also remember this. For these two answers, time is always positive. So if you get a negative there, something went wrong. Height is always going to be positive. So if you get a negative on this part, something went wrong, okay? All right, negative 16 times 4 is negative 64. 64 times 2 is what? 128 plus my 7. All right, y'all, negative 64 plus 128 is positive 64. 64 plus 7 gives me 71. So that means the maximum height was 71, and I guess it was in feet, right? All right, so mine did it in 2 seconds. And say they already give you the seconds and the feet stuff. So you just put in them numbers and then you're going to hit next. All right, so I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop at stop at 16. So we will, once we do our 8.1 Wednesday, we're going to finish this out. And there's not as big of problems on this part of it. So we'll be able to knock it out pretty quick. So Any questions, y'all? So y'all really tonight, focus on the 5.4, okay? And then I'll send this video out. That way you'll have the first 15 of these problems, and we'll knock out the other 10 Wednesday night after I knock out the 8.1, okay? All right, y'all, I'm gonna stop this recording.